Here we go then with some lyrics. Now, when Barney was at school, they said he'd never make the grade. He was living in a kipper-coloured dream. Barney ought to learn to concentrate, his teachers used to say, as he drifted in the bottom stream. Barney was a waster, got no bits of paper, ended up attending a machine, turning little piggies into plastic packaged sausages to sell in the heliport canteen. First few lines from a song written and recorded by a bloke called Leon Rosselson back in 1979, called Barney's Epic Homer. So let's leave Barney there for a short while, and we'll come back to Barney soon because it's all tied in together.
Yeah.
In the 1980s, ASD was around 3 to 4 in every 10,000 children. In the early 2000s, it was around 1 in every 1,000 children. These days, it's around 1 in 158-year-olds in the US, and they're considered to be with this disorder. So what is ASD? It's Autism Spectrum Disorder. And so why is there a massive increase from all those years ago, from the 80s to the 2000s, and to last year? There's a massive increase. It was suggested that certain children's vaccines might have been the cause, but on the whole, these days, this is very much being discarded. So it's not the vaccines. There was a sort of a conspiracy theory going around. There is the vaccines that children, like the polio vaccine and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But they discovered that it's just nothing to do with the vaccines. Other culprits have been thought to be additives in the drinking tap water, like fluoride.
Yeah.
Processed foods, additives in certain sweets. So in the US, they have that E additive, that red dye sort of thing that they have in their sweets.
Yeah.
In the UK, you can't get any red Smarties anymore, because it's been banned. And also the quality of the air. They thought if you live next to a motorway, chances are that you might get this ASD. Some think certain pesticides on crops even could be a contributing factor for the lower IQs and the delays in the children's intellectual development. Further still, the suggestion of the increase of premature baby births has not been ruled out, or even women having children later in life, or even obesity.
Yeah.
Last year in the UK, there's been a 9-fold increase of people waiting to be tested. It's 2019, according to the NHS. Then, of course, there's the parameters of the diagnosis. So in the US, between 2011 and 2022, it suffered an increase of 450% of the diagnoses in adults between 26 and 34 years of age. So they must have slipped under the radar when they were kids, and it was only discovered later on in life.
Yeah.
So another thing, in 2013, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, it's like a psychiatrist's Bible. It's used to diagnose things like depression and bipolar disorder.
Yeah. And
they decided to group together Asperger's syndrome and pervasive development disorder into one category, which is this autism spectrum disorder. So could this movement of the goalpost be the reason that more kids are considered to be autistic? Dr. Courtney Scott seems to think so. He's a director of a group called the Momentous Recovery Group. It could be the case, if you widen the net, you're going to catch more fish. Yeah. So you had two different groups, the Asperger's and the other one, the pervasive, which are two different things. And if they had 5 from one and 5 to the other, and decided to change it to autism spectrum, you'd have 10. Yeah. So that'll double the number of autistic children, if that makes any sense to you.
Yes.
So is it environment or is it premature births? Nobody can really put their finger on it as the root cause of ASD.
Mm.
Or is it the proper psychiatric profession who seem to be making new diagnoses? The jury's still out. So let's get back to Barney. Leon Russellson, like I said, wrote and published a song back in 79. However, if Barney was a real person, he would be a typical ASD patient. Only back then it was less known, and the song was questioning not only the fact that in society a person dared to be different, but also how they were pigeonholed and frowned upon if they didn't conform to the norms of society, to the norms of the society where they were living,
Yeah.
even though they didn't do any harm to anybody.
Mm.
Symptoms these days of ASD include social communication. So, for example, if you don't look eye to eye to somebody else, or you don't strike up conversation with somebody else, or if you tend not to laugh so much at jokes and things like that, that they could be contributing symptoms. Me personally, I'd just say that's called being shy, but
Yeah.
there you are. Uh, the repetitive behaviors is another. Sometimes rocking backwards and forwards is a is some of the symptoms that can diagnose this. And also sensory sensitivities. So like loud bangs, uh, things that happen all of a sudden, bright lights and things like that.
Yeah.
If you suffer from these sort of things in a
Mm.
collective,
Mm.
then they could be diagnosed with this ASD.
Mm.
So, is there anything to be stigmatized by it? Not really. The richest man in the world is ASD, and it didn't do him any harm. We can see this. We can see when he has difficulty interacting with
Yeah.
in a social environment,
Mm.
but he's extremely clever,
Yeah.
and he when he sits down and puts his mind to something, then
Mm.
he really draws
Yeah.
results.
Yeah.
So there you have it, ASD, huge increase in cases. What's caused it? Me personally, I think it's because the psychiatrists have moved the goalposts and they've made their net wider.
Mm.
So they're going to catch more. Like I said, they're going to catch more fish.
Yeah.
So that's ASD for you. I'll let you rock backwards and forwards with that one.
Actually, you struck quite close to home because when I was younger, I used to be quite quiet as a kid. Yeah. I didn't used to talk to anyone. Just used to go about my own business. Yeah. And I don't know if my parents sort of, well, they weren't that worried. I just carried on with my life. I read quite a lot, was always considered reasonably intelligent. Um, yeah, I just didn't want to talk to anyone, which sometimes I think is a good policy, even today. Yeah. Oh, I yearn for those days sometimes. Yeah, but obviously I've got a job where you have to, so evidently I turned out okay. Yeah, I was always a little bit different. Apparently, I was always into my own things, watching different films and everything else. Um, Again, yeah, I do think we're over categorizing and over, um, yeah, pigeonholing today. Yeah, trying to find where people fit. As human beings, we're entitled to be different, our own people. Yeah. Um, like you said, some people are shy. They're not naturally outgoing. Good luck to them. Yeah. Normally, if they're reasonably intelligent, they've got other skills we don't know about. And yeah, okay, you can see when people are socially awkward. We're not machines. I mean, even machines throw wobbly sometimes. Yeah, we're not programmable. We're a creation of chemical and electro, yeah, chemical and electro processes in effect. Yeah, which are never going to be precise. Um, and yeah, there are some people that have severe issues sometimes, whatever reasons, traumatic reasons or other things. Yeah. I mean, you can sometimes tell when, unfortunately, someone does have some serious problems. Near us, sometimes you can hear them going. There is a place where, unfortunately, people who have disorders are kept in a house and cared for. And sometimes you can hear them. Yeah. So I know it exists. I'm not denying there is a existence of a problem. There always has been. You read medieval texts, you read texts from before then. Yeah, different other things that have gone around then there's always been people that have had a slightly different way of life, different way of going on. Normally you find people that do have these, if you give them something to focus on, they're absolutely brilliant. I mean, the whole premise of the film Rain Man was this. That's a slightly different diagnostics there, but yes. And we're talking is what psychiatrists are called amateurs here. Yeah. But we know, we're experienced in the world to know. And I do actually think, yes, the overall spectrum of what's considered a mental disorder has broadened. Some children are diagnosed as being this, high energy. Well, kids have got to be. I'd rather a kid have high energy running around. I worry about the kid, like I said, it's in the corner more, doing nothing and crying all the time. Yeah, they're the ones you've got to worry about. I mean, there are psychiatrists who say that boys, particularly boys, should be running
Once
around.
they've taken,
Yeah,
once they've taken,
yeah, yeah. Particularly boys should be running around and getting tired and
I
interacting with
think
each
it's
other.
at
Yeah,
school since they've stopped doing education.
yeah, maybe.
Yeah, I was saying, since schools they've stopped doing physical education.
Yeah.
The kids have got to let off steam somewhere.
Mm. Yeah. I mean, used to be in the playground. Well, now they've banned a lot of games that are deemed too dangerous. And I saw something the other day that I mean, it came about in the 70s where they banned girls having hula hoops, boys having other things, um, even banning you pretending to shoot each other with guns. Okay. Yeah, I know we've got social issues in the world with that, but yeah, you've got films with that in TV programs. We grew up with it. Yeah. Um, and people emulate. Yeah, if you're not allowed to do that, people carry around with sticks and all that, sword fighting, etc. Now, I'm not saying it's all part of it, but the way that we diagnose children now, they do miss it when kids are actually have very extreme violent tendencies, and these are ones you've got to look for. Unfortunately, they seem to miss these. They just worry about what normal is, in my opinion. Yeah, there's probably a lot of kids who are being diagnosed with something that's quite normal. I've heard several cases, both in the UK and here, where this kid is under psychiatric reasoning or whatever they call it, psychiatric, mentoring or what they call it. Seemed perfectly normal to me. I'm thinking, why? Well, they're doing this and doing that. Well, in which case, when I was a kid, I would have been there. Yeah. Um, I'm going to put it in another way. Now, I know psychiatrists, and I've got some as clients, and they're when they explain things to you, you begin to realize that these people do a lot of analysis. Yeah. And the problem is now, and I call it the digital encyclopedia Britannica syndrome as well. The parents read something online, look into it deeper, then decide their own kid may have problems, may have issues. Instead of being a concerned parent and talking to the kid directly themselves, which my parents always did, they would always talk to me directly. Are you okay? What's this? What's that? Yeah. They feel that they have to have a third party do it as well. Now, I'm probably going to upset people by saying this. Yeah. And I do think that maybe things are being latched onto. It is a very delicate thing. I'm not saying that mental disorders don't exist. Why are there now young kids going around harming their school colleagues? They're being told they're victims as well. There could be a part of this as well. Yeah. oh, you're not normal.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to do something bad claim claim that you're a victim of your own crime,
Yeah,
you know, I mean, the thing is that parents these days, a vast majority of families, both parents working, and they leave the child behind somewhere. In the old days, back in my day, they were called latchkey kids.
yeah. I mean, I grew
You know,
up
where
in, yeah,
they'd go home and the parents weren't at home. They had to let themselves in with the key.
yeah, but I come from that generation.
You know, so
Um,
there was nobody there to mentor.
well, you didn't need anyone to mentor. You learn well, say learn how to make a sandwich even. Yeah. Um, my parents worked, my mother worked, went home sometimes, or she had a life, or she,
You didn't. You,
yeah, gone.
somebody taught you how to make that sandwich, Mark,
Yeah, well,
and that's called mentoring.
yeah, okay. When they had time. I mean, I'll say had time. Um, yeah, I mean, the joke was, yeah, I didn't have a nerve. I didn't have time. I wasn't allowed to have a mental disorder. My mother's, yeah, my mother's fist would do it, sort of thing. But yeah, it's a joke in that, people. I'm not suggesting that's a violent way of doing it. But yeah, you weren't allowed to have it. It was a luxury you weren't allowed to have. Um, I've known hyper, what would class hyperactive. Yeah, I know there was someone I went to school with who was a bit strange, who has since gone on to, yeah, or a couple of kids have gone on to do harm to others. I don't really want to dwell too much on it. I found out by accident the other year. Um, but the overall, I mean, sometimes, um, yeah, we used to have labels for kids when we were at school, a little bit bullying, that. But if a kid did well at school, we called them teachers' pets or something like this, yeah. But they were very focused, and that may have been a form of it. Some of them went off to be successful, others didn't, didn't make it, as it were, almost. Um, but that's life. That's selection process. Um,
But that's a knife with that's a knife with two blades.
yeah,
Because if you did exceptionally well, you were called the teacher's pet.
yeah,
And if you were the Dougie of the class, if you were the class,
yeah,
then also that led a stigma. And normally the people who were classed as the Dougie,
yeah,
they tried to disrupt the class because they didn't have the
yeah,
either the class wasn't taught in a way that they could understand,
mm,
or they were too frightened to say that they couldn't understand and just
yeah,
let the I mean, when I changed school
mm,
when I was 14 years of age,
mm,
our curriculum at the two schools one was completely different than to the other.
yeah,
And so in one school I was learning modern maths,
mm,
about Venn
yeah,
diagrams and
yeah,
equations, and in the other, when I went to the second one, we were on about multiplying fractions.
mm,
And it just went over my head.
yeah.
you know.
Um,
And so I suffered in the second school
mm,
because I was
mm,
thrown in at the deep end,
mm,
thrown in at the deep end to learn all these how to multiply fractions and angles of a triangle and things like that, which I just didn't cover in the first school.
yeah.
And of course, I paid the price.
Well, yeah, I mean, on the other hand, it may have been part of the making of you as well. You learned to adapt from it. You had a bad experience. You didn't become a victim. You learned from it. I mean, and you learned how to think on your feet. Partly. I mean, this is it. They all want to. There's so much standardization is happening now. Is what I see. I mean, don't forget, I'm an engineer. I all come from standard. Yeah, we have a standard set of procedures and things like this. I like this, but you also have to learn how to break away from it as well. And this is sometimes what disorientates people, kids that have grown up with the textbook almost. Yeah. When I was at school, we didn't really have textbooks. The teachers got bored, actually, and I know so I can relate to this. So went off and got us to do different things. Um, they had a little bit of scope to do things. They kept us occupied. You said about teaching. Yeah, we had the disruptive kids. They were sometimes dealt with in ways that we couldn't even think about sometimes. Yeah, in the background. Um, yeah, and I tell you what, also, the other thing we had that I see lacking now with children is discipline. Yeah. Um, if you were disruptive, eventually you'd meet the one teacher, not saying I was, I saw it, who would stand up to you. Yeah. Be it male or female. I mean, we had female teachers we were terrified as well in a boys' school. Yeah. Um, you knew they weren't threatening when they threatened to do something. Yeah. And yeah, I mean, our focus was keeping out of trouble as well. Yeah. And you didn't dare admit to being a victim because the teachers would get on your back as well about that. Yeah. Or you didn't. I mean, teachers were trained how to spot problems. And sometimes we had teachers who used to take you aside and help you when they were crying. They were that good. Yeah. In a way that was not apparent to the other students. Yeah. And it might be quietly when everyone else had their heads down in the struggling, they might come and have a look at a kid's work and try and just help them a little bit. Yeah. Quietly. Or it might be in a different way as well. Yeah, they might just call you to the office quietly and just talk to you. Yeah. They were good teachers and they have flexibility. They didn't have to conform to any particular mold or model. They were trained, don't get me wrong, and they also did the psychology at the time. I'll be quite honest, and I also be quite honest, I don't think the lockdowns helped kids a lot either. What I did see was quite clever with some schools.
Well, I mean, I
Mm.
was sort of,
Yeah, you talk about 2013, but yeah, okay, yeah, yeah. But what I have seen since lockdown, when they started bringing kids back in, they got what I've been taught to do, peer-to-peer learning.